Here on the left.
Mark, Dustin DePierre, Indianapolis Star. You talked at the beginning of the series about just the respect you have for Rick Carlisle. Just what's it been like to kind of sit on the other end of the chessboard against him for 7 games?
Humbling. He's a great coach. Their team plays with a ruthlessly consistent identity. They really compete. They're never out of a game. They've done an unbelievable job collectively of building the team to the point where they can get to this point and perform the way they have in this point. And it's been the case, in the end. I mean, there's not a lot of nights where you feel like you're at an advantage from a coaching standpoint. There's great coaches in the league, and he's certainly right at the top of the list.
On your right, Nick.
Mark, you often talk about simplicity in your message and tactics. How key for you is it tomorrow that your guys are playing instinctually and not thinking here in a Game 7?
Critical. I think that's the deal. Is you want to be prepared. Certainly want to learn the lessons, get the game plan into the game, but not at the expense of aggressiveness, confidence, instincts. I think that's been a strength of ours this season. We certainly need to lean on that. We got to understand the work's done, and we got to trust that work. The muscle's built. We got to flex that muscle. That's what tomorrow will come down to for us.
Straight ahead, Barry.
Barry Trammell, Tulsa World. Mark, we talk about Game 7 pressure on players. How much pressure is there on coaches in general, you in particular, to make the right scheme adjustments, to make the right rotations, those kinds of things?
I always feel a ton of pressure, but the pressure is not external. It's not like a game circumstance. It's not a situation. It's the internal pressure of doing right by the players, serving the team, putting the team in the best possible position to be successful, especially this team. It's a group of guys that I love coaching, and so I feel a great sense of responsibility to them, a great sense of responsibility to the organization, the city, in every circumstance, though. That's a fire that keeps on burning regardless of circumstance.
Chris, on your right, up front.
Mark, Chris Maddox, Sports Illustrated. There are a lot of statistics that explain the outcomes of the games in this series, but to follow up on something Nick asked, the intangibles seem to have had an impact on every one. The effort plays, playing with force, imposing your will. Is there any way that you can prepare your guys to win those types of battles, or you just have to hope that they come out with the requisite energy?
I mean, it's a contest of wills. I think the reason it's swung between the two teams is because these are two teams that have leaned on that heavily to get to this point. It's two teams where the whole is better than the sum of the parts. It's two teams that are highly competitive, two teams that play together. And so two teams that kind of rely on the same stuff for their success, that are squared off against each other. And so, you're not going to exist in the win column of that, on a possession or even obviously in a series for either team. And so I agree with you that those things have defined the games of the series. I think both teams understand that. Both teams are going to try to do that tomorrow, and the better team will win.
Jenny.
Hey, Mark. Jenny Carlson with the Oklahoman. I know you're acutely focused on what happens between the lines tomorrow, but Game 7s obviously have a lore in sports, and you long told us your sports history, you're a sports fan of many things. Kind of put us inside being involved in a Game 7 in a championship series, just your appreciation for that.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege for everybody that gets to participate. It's an unbelievable thing and an unbelievable experience. And both teams have earned the opportunity to experience that. And so we're going to enjoy it. We're going to throw our best punch, go out there and be who we are. But it's a privilege to play in a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I mean, no one's skipping that in this whole thing. But, once the ball goes up in the air, the game is still going to come down to the same things. And we've got to be able to focus on that despite the fact that we're grateful for the opportunity.
Tim on the right, third row.
Tim Reynolds, AP. Mark, for a team that obviously plays very physical on the defensive end, you guys aren't afraid to foul. You don't go over the line either. You've got almost no techs all year. Shea got one for waving a towel in support of a teammate making his first basket. And
It was rescinded.
And it was rescinded.
For the record.
Is it an organizational taproot, like we are just not going to get technical fouls, or is that just the way these guys are, that they're just not privy to going over that line?
Well, first of all, we're physical, but I think we've done a great job. There was a point in the season where our free throw differential was historically low, not only the lowest in the league, but lowest in the modern history of the NBA. And we really dug into that and tried to make sure that we were putting ourselves in more positions to get fouled with the force that we were playing with on offense, which I think has shown up in the playoffs. Dub specifically is a guy that's made huge jumps there. And then defensively, understanding legal and illegal physicality. We don't want to take illegal fouls. I want to be very clear on that. We want to play physically, but we want to play legal and not put our opponents on the line or in the bonus. As far as the technicals, we just try to. And it's not a thing we talk openly about. First of all, I respect the officials. I think our team respects the officials. We understand that that's an imperfect job. It's not going to be perfect. They're trying to get it right. And then we really try to just focus on what we can control, not because of anything other than that's the best pathway to play your best and that's the best pathway to win. And so we have hopefully a culture of focusing on what we can control and blocking everything else out. And, Jenny mentioned Game 7s and the lore of that. The outcome of the game and the context of the game is outside of our control. In between the lines is inside our control. And the referees is in that category too. We can't control how they call the game and what they put a whistle on and what they don't. We can control a lot of other things in the game, and that's what we need to focus on.
We have time for Michael and John.
Michael Grange from Sportsnet in Toronto. There's not many guys on either side that have kind of played statistically to their season averages. I think obviously just the quality of the defense being played, but one guy is Pascal Siakam. Are you okay with that? And, is there any reason why he's been able to play to kind of his level, and do you need to get him off that if you're going to win Sunday?
I think it's all play. He's had some quiet games in the series, as all great players do in a playoff series, because you're playing against a great team. The deeper you go, the better the competition tends to be. And then you're playing against a great team over and over and over again, which is an experience you just are not getting in the regular season. And so there's no point in the regular season where you play a great team 7 straight times. And as a result of that, great players, great teams, they vacillate in and out of everything. To Chris's question with the intangibles, it's very hard to sustain the exact same level over and over and over again in a playoff series, which is why I think, some teams win games, they lose games, and some great players have really loud, great nights, and then they have quieter nights. So I think we've generally done a pretty good job in the series, and so is Indiana, and that's why it's 3-3, and now it just comes down to who plays better tomorrow.
John, last one, fourth row towards the middle.
Coach, why do you think that the much bigger difference between your wins and losses in this series has been on your offensive end of the floor, and not just shooting, but also turnovers, offensive rebounding, free throws?
Yeah, I think, I'm not pointing out anything that's not obvious. Our defense has been more consistent in these playoffs, especially than our offense has. I think generally offense is harder in the playoffs for everybody. The same is true for Indiana in this series. Their offense is not where it was in the regular season or even earlier in the playoffs. I think it's just harder to score when you play a team over and over and over again. We've got to continue to try to find solutions with what they're doing. We've done a good job of that. We were not great with that in Game 6, but we have another opportunity to do that tomorrow, and that's what we got to do if we want to win the game.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep,
Shea
thanks.
will be right up.